title of his program is Protectors of Wildlife and Natural Resources. Colonel John Cobb was promoted in 2020 to the Chief of Virginia Conservation Police, the VCP, within the Department of Wildlife Resources, the DWR. His vision is to build upon the key components of professional standards by enhancing our level of quality public service, being an employer of choice, and pursuing excellence as the protectors of our wildlife, natural resources, and those who enjoy the great outdoors. John currently serves as the inaugural board chairman for the North American Wildlife Law Enforcement Accreditation. John became a game warden in 1995, and during his 10 years as a field officer was recognized with various state, regional, and national honors as a Wildlife Officer of the Year. He also obtained state licensure as a polygraph examiner and earned national certification as an internal affairs investigator. Over his 29 years of service with DWR in multiple positions, John led the establishment of the Office of Professional Standards, OPS, served as the inaugural chairman of the OPS Advisory Council, designed and implemented a citizen feedback system along with an employee suggestion program, and wrote the VCP Recognition and Engagement Handbook and the Leadership Development Continuum. In 2024, as a founding member of the OPS Advisory Council, Colonel Cobb was honored as the leader of our first ever unit citation by the Secretary of Natural and Historic Resources. This was a direct result of being recognized by the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, AFWA, with their highest annual Teamwork Recognition Award in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, in 2023 for outstanding national teamwork achievement in conservation law enforcement. After graduating Hopewell High School, John immediately began his law enforcement career in 1983 as an airborne military police officer, reaching the rank of sergeant after being recognized as a distinguished graduate of the U.S. Army Basic Leadership School. His unit was honored as the best MP company in the military. He then graduated from Richard Land College of the College of William and Mary, after which he became a Virginia Tech graduate with a bachelor's degree in wildlife management.
Well, thank you all for having me today, and thanks for coming in this weather. I see a lot of umbrellas and rain gear today, so much appreciated. And as Susan mentioned, our topic today is going to be protectors of wildlife and natural resources. And what I really hope you'll see from my conversation today is that everyone in this room can be a protector of wildlife and natural resources. There's a reason for that, and it's different in the United States than it is in other countries. And hopefully I'll hit on that a little bit as we speak. But and then the overview of what we're doing is the history, the mission, the successes, and the future challenges of Virginia Conservation Police and within the Department of Wildlife Resources. So, obviously she did an excellent job. I didn't know sorry I put so much information in there, but, I did start in law enforcement 42 years ago. I've worn about every level of badge there is when I say that, federal, state, and local. This is by far, I think, if you're in law enforcement, probably the best the badge to wear. The mission really stands out of what we can do. And I've been doing it now. This month will make 30 years since I've been with this department. So I never thought I'd be colonel, obviously. Things just you don't plan that type of thing. It just kind of worked out. Since I am from Hopewell, before I go on, normally I'd probably stop there. Well, a couple of things I do want to say. Normally, first of all, I don't do this very often. It's very rare that I get in front of the public and speak. I do it a lot with legislators, with corporations we're trying to get support from, but it's a matter of time. I don't have the time. I have a very small management team, so obviously I just don't have the time to do these things. There's really three reasons why I'm here today. One is I'm from Hopewell. Number two is I very much believe in historical societies or foundations and the purposes in which y'all are trying to do, and I greatly believe in that. And number three, my mom told me I had to be here. Irene Cobb. So, and that's probably the most important reason. So, yeah. So, well, you might want to wait. But very fortunate to be born and raised. I guess technically I was born in Petersburg, but raised in Hopewell all the way through high school, and very good experience. always wanted, and I'm talking to the right age group here. I tell you, when I get in front of my cadets, it's a whole different ball game. But I can say things like Mutual Omaha's Wild Kingdom, and I think most of us in here know. I think most of us understand what you had to do to change the TV. You had to get up and turn the knob, and you only had 4 choices probably. But really, it was that show that I used to watch on Sunday nights, maybe 8 o'clock, maybe 9 o'clock, probably near Disney. Disney was on that night too, I think, sometimes. And I knew I always wanted to be a game warden or a wildlife biologist. So that was my journey, and then just happened to work out. Went to the military to get some money for college. I did try the biology side, and what I really figured out in my time was I was much better dealing with. I like the interactions with people. So, and that's more of a law enforcement function. Unfortunately, everybody thinks the biologists spend time with cuddly animals. Most of the time, they're not alive. So they're counting teeth on a jawbone. So it's different. So, but both jobs are very respected and very much needed. So, starting about the mission. So, when you work for an organization, really the mission, the vision, that's really important for you to feel like you can make a difference. So, luckily, our mission, and it used to be, just so you know, times change, names changes, it does make things complicated, but we are the Department of Wildlife Resources now. It used to be the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. If you didn't hunt, a lot of people didn't know what a game was. They thought maybe that's a lottery. So over time, they thought that might be a good change. So they did make that change. But our mission is to conserve, connect, protect. Very simple. It's the conserve is conserve the wildlife for the next generations. Make sure we have these resources out there. The connect is try to bring people out in the outdoors. Let them know what great things we have in the great outdoors. And then protect, obviously, law enforcement does all 3 of these, but we are heavily on the protect side, obviously, to make sure those species are out there. And what's really changed, even in my time with the department of 30 years, it's much more now about protecting people. The people don't have the same outdoor skills they used to have. I mean, we all played in the streets, right, until the lights went out. That's not what happens with a lot of kids now. So they really don't understand. And even in Virginia, you think, you can't get lost in the woods in Virginia. Yes, you can. And it can be dangerous. So we do spend a lot of time with that. Law Enforcement Division, which I'm a part of, is the biggest division in our agency. I have roughly 200 total employees, and we'll talk more about what that breakup is a little bit later. But we're now called Virginia Conservation Police. We used to be called Game Wardens, and probably most of you remember that. That change was in 2007, so it's now been almost, hard to believe, 20 years. And really the reason why they did it was it goes right back to public safety. So again, your average citizen may not know what a game warden is, but they probably know what if you put the word police in a title. And we do have full police powers. If I see somebody going down the road and they're going to run somebody off the road, or if they're look like they're drunk driving, we're going to take care of it. And that is not always the case with other law. If you think of a lot of people get us confused with park officers that work in the state parks. They don't have full police powers. So when they're off the park, they can't stop anybody. So that's very important that we have those powers. We spend the majority of our time on private lands. So it's very important we have those powers to do what we have to do. Let's talk a little bit about the history of and the traditions that started with mainly the conservation. We were here, we had officers in these positions before we had an agency. So it all goes back 122 years when the officers were founded. And the reason why we got in this noble profession, how did we basically get where we're at, is because the North American model, and I don't know if you've ever heard that term or not, but the North American model all has to do with the way we manage wildlife. And it's a different model than most other countries, specifically different than the European countries like England, very different. And let me tell you why that is. So what that is in the European model, the landowner owns the wildlife. So as soon as the deer steps on his property, it is his deer. He can do what he wants to with it. And if you remember Robin Hood, that's a clue there. So the king owns it. And normally what they'll do is they'll hire what they call gamekeepers to keep people from harvesting their animals. And it's so crazy that when you actually if you get permission from a landowner to harvest the animal, okay, you harvest it. Now you got to ask permission if you can have some of the meat and which pieces of the meat you can have, because it still belongs to the person who owns the property. Whoever the property owner is, he owns the wildlife. And that really is the way that most states, or not most states, most countries are set up. They're set up where the people have that kind of right. Well, the North American model is a public trust model. And that says that wildlife is held in the public trust. So everybody, you all here own the deer, the turkey, the bear. You own them. So it's a whole different system. And it did cause problems. You know, like anything, it was a different system. And when we originally went to it, it did cause major problems. And you'll know some of them because y'all are history buffs. So I'll tell you what the major problems were. So the major problem was market hunting. So since now there's nobody protecting the wildlife, there are no gamekeepers hired by the kings or presidents. So now it belongs to everybody. There's no rules. And you can just go do what you want to do. And everybody knows about the buffalo. Great example of the buffalo. So they just wiped them out. If there was any value in the animal, they wanted it. If there was one feather in a duck or whatever, a specific thing they were looking for a hat, they shot the birds. And they shot many, as many as you want. No limit, shoot them all up. Hard to believe, but in the early 1900s, you'd be lucky to find a deer. I remember hunting my dad probably 70s, in the 70s, we were lucky to find a deer. We were happy to see a hoof print of a deer in the mud. We were using dogs, doing everything we can to get them up. So turkey, same way, almost extinct. Canada goose, elk, gone off the landscape in Virginia. Elk is now back in Virginia, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit probably. So that's what happens with market hunting. A good idea. The problem was no rules. Everybody free for all. Everybody owns it, so you can go anywhere and shoot it. It doesn't, there's no ownership. So that's very quickly, when things got really bad 122 years ago, they said, we better hire somebody to protect this wildlife. We better put a few rules on the books. And they actually did that before they even formed the agency, which is very unusual to do it that way. And that happened across the United States, by the way. So it wasn't just in Virginia. So we go from market hunting to actually restocking wildlife. Pretty crazy. The amount of abundance, if you ever look when they landed here in Jamestown, the amount of abundance they used to talk about, a lot of places are named, like islands or whatever, or areas are named for the number of wildlife, that they saw. It's just unbelievable. Well, that wasn't the case early 1900s, and we had to actually restock wildlife. And restocking wildlife is a very difficult thing to do. They tried a lot of different things. They tried, domesticated wildlife. Take a turkey that's domesticated, try to put it in the woods. It ain't gonna last very long. We moved them from different states. Some states had a better population of certain things, so we shared different wildlife. And that occurs throughout, the mid-1900s. They get better at it, really pretty good at it now, but luckily now we don't have to do it anymore. Thank goodness, because that was a real hard thing to do. It cost a lot of money. The latest thing they did was the elk. The elk were stocked in the southwest part of Virginia about 10 years ago. That herd is now close to 1,000 elk. They put them in a great location. Because the coal mine fields, they were pretty much useless. Nobody wanted to build homes on them. They were just rock. Elk don't mind rock, so they don't conflict very often with the farmers. So it worked out really well. It's a great success. And now you can take a bus ride if you're out that way, and you can go view elk in Virginia. I don't know if most people know that or not, but out in a place called Grundy, so far out west. That's a little bit about that. And then, of course, we came on the game wardens, and really the change for us is now, I don't have to tell y'all, it's very easy to run into a deer with your car. So, some people actually think that some things are a nuisance. You may think Canada goose are a nuisance, especially the ones that don't like to travel anymore. We call them resident geese. They think it's better not to fly around. So they live local. So, and they leave, things behind. So, it is what it is, but I can tell you we're better off with a diverse population, obviously. If there's any issue now, we don't have the predators. And if there's another issue that we're really dealing with, to be honest with you, is the lack of people that are willing to go out and hunt. People that hunt wildlife they're the ones that are controlling the population. If you let Mother Nature do it, they're going to do it severely. They're going to punish all the deer. Hunters obviously will harvest, but unfortunately we have less hunters now. So if anything, we have an overabundance of a lot of wildlife. We have a lot of nuisance wildlife that people like to call them, and we have to manage all that. But really, what we do probably more now than we ever did was probably the public safety factor again. Again, the people that want to get out, they don't always have the skill set, And then, of course, we're also responsible. In 1960, they made us the boating agency for Virginia. So we're the recreational boating agency. If anything to do with recreational boating, if you get a boat accident or whatever, we're responsible to go out and work it. And I tell you right now, it's been really bad the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of boat accidents. Nothing too serious, but we do deal with, fatalities once in a while. So that's a real driving force for us now. Our scope of our work is very diverse. More than any other law enforcement, I can tell you. When you get into other law enforcement agencies, they're very, very good about siloing you what you do. So you work the road, you're going to do traffic enforcement, and then you might move to another unit like investigative or drug enforcement. Most of our officers are expected to do it all, and that is a very unique challenge that we have. I'll read something to you that I actually read to the governor when he first got to be governor. I've been colonel for 4.5 years, and I did get a chance to meet with him and tell him what our challenges are and what our work is. And this is actually very much what I read to him 3.5 years ago. And I'm just going to read a few things off of it. We do have to have the ability to do public safety response in difficult terrain and harsh weather conditions. A lot of days it's really great to be a game warden or conservation police officer. The weather's nice. But then there's days like this, thunder and lightning. Most people shouldn't be on the water, but guess what? There's somebody out there needs your help, you're going to go. So it's a give and take, and it's a balance. We're very fortunate in Virginia to have a very good canine unit and tracking team. We have I would say we have the best canine unit in the United States, and our tracking team's right there too. We have currently 9 dogs scattered throughout the state, and they do an excellent job of finding people and searching. Just to give you an example, over a 5-year period, our officers received 20 life-saving awards and 3 meritorious life-saving awards. And what they are, meritorious is, that means you could have died in the process. So that's 23 lives were saved, 3 situations the person could have died saving the person. So they're very good at that. We teach, hunter safety, boater safety. We do a lot of that. Unfortunately, now they do a lot of that online. I like the old system better when you come in a classroom like this and you hand the gun to people and everybody wants to do things online. It's not the same experience, obviously, but that's what we have. We are second only to Virginia State Police in the number of state officers that we have. Right now we're running 154 officers. State police is a lot bigger. There's like 2,000, but we are the second largest. There are 2 other agencies that do natural resource protection a little bit. I mentioned the Park Service, the state parks. They have around 90 officers, but they're really think of them more of your security guard or your public safety person for a park. And if it becomes a wildlife issue, they're going to call us. And then the other one you have is a little bit closer to us is VMRC, Virginia Marine Resource Commission. They are Marine police officers. Their primary function of that agency is to deal with saltwater and really commercial fishing. So they're a commercial branch. They're only in one part of the state. There's about 60 officers. They will work a boat accident for us. They are trained to do that. So they'll force multiplier for us some. And they currently actually go to our academy. We've started doing that recently where they go to our same police academy that we have. When it comes to, and we often, in rural jurisdictions, we are often called on by the local sheriff's offices. They may only have 1 or 2 people working at night. We are often backing them up. With our numbers, we try to put 1 officer in every county, and there's almost 100 counties in Virginia, so there's very few officers left over. We normally put them in office, maybe double up in a few places like Smith Mountain Lake, Lake Anna, some of your bigger bodies of water. We have more calls for service. Moving on to I was talking about public safety earlier. About 33% of our enforcement actions, either a warning, written summons, or a arrest, is going to be public safety right now. That they fall under the public safety codes. So you're driving under the influence, reckless driving, reckless boating, reckless safety equipment, obviously. So all those things are public safety, and we spend a lot of time on that. We do spend a lot of time. I mentioned earlier that we do public enforcement on public lands, but we really do spend the majority of our time. In Virginia, there's much more private land than there is public land. If you go out west, it might be different, but we spend a lot of our time on private lands. What we're not allowed to go into without a search warrant is your house area, where your house is, and your curtilage of that house. But if you own 100 acres, 50 acres, that rest of that property, again, because wildlife's held in a public trust, we have the ability to follow that wildlife. That would be different probably in Europe, right? You'd probably have to get a search warrant, but the Supreme Court has ruled that that's open fields and they want that protection. So that's why we do spend a lot of time on private lands. Waterways, it's pretty amazing what our officers do. They first of all, they got the variety of the seasons, they got the variety of what they have to do in a given day, and then they have a huge area to cover. So on average, our officers cover, with our current staffing, 455 square miles. You don't get bored of that. If you want to put it in a different way, that is 300,000 acres. A lot of property. We are the second largest landowner. The Department of Wildlife Resources owns a lot of land too. We have a lot of management areas. We don't put buildings on. They're really much open for the public to hunt, fish, wildlife watch, walk. Those properties actually we're the second largest landowner. Anybody figure out who the largest state landowner is? It's the largest state landowner. Some people get this one right. State organization owns the most land in the state. We're number 2. You drive on it every day. Not very boring roads though. They're straight, pretty much. Straight. Very boring property. But you add all those roads up, they're the biggest property owner. We do over 53,000 miles of rivers and over 116,000 acres of lakes. We're seeing definitely an increased usage of the waterways, especially by kayaks, canoes, and paddlecraft. And the reason being they're fairly inexpensive. But again, you get no training, you don't take any courses, and guess what? You get out there and you get in a thunderstorm, what are you going to do? Help. The one thing now, when I first came on, nobody had a cell phone. Now I got a cell phone, and I'm going to get help. So, which is a good thing, but just realize what that does. About 32% of our boating fatalities occur on paddlecraft, and normally because they're not wearing a life jacket. That's simple. In 2021, we had 113 field officers at that time, and we removed over 236 boaters, drivers operating under the influence on our highways and waterways. We also made over 415 arrests for firearms violations. A lot of them were felons with guns, which you're not allowed to do in the state of Virginia. So I think that's plenty on that. I mean, that's the situation report. I just read some of that. In addition, we talk about private lands a lot. In addition, we are called upon to patrol over 2 million acres of public lands. So we do have public lands in the state of Virginia. Virginia is a very diverse state. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you go to the Eastern Shore. It's almost like going back in time, if anybody's ever had that experience, because they haven't allowed the commercial development. And they do speak different out there, obviously. But and then you go all the way out to Lee County. When you really could be, if you look north of Lee, you'll see Ohio. So that's a long ways, and they speak different too, by the way. But it's pretty amazing how great this state is and the diversity that we have in this state. So what else do I want to talk about? I don't know if I think I mentioned the number. I'll mention it again. We currently have 154 total officers. We have 14 recruits in our academy. We are the only law enforcement agency in the state of Virginia, and it probably includes sheriff's offices that I'm aware of, that have fewer officers today than we had 30 years ago. We have significantly less officers. We have roughly, when I came on 30 years, we had about 50 more officers. We were running about 225 officers. So a lot of counties had 2 officers. We don't have that luxury anymore. A lot of people are confused on our funding. Our funding is, we do not get state taxes. There's no state tax. There's nothing we get there. Our funding is basically, especially law enforcement side of the house, is basically off somebody buying a hunting, fishing, boating license. That's where we get our money. And the hunters are going down. The number of hunters each year goes down. The number of licenses sold. The number of fishing is pretty stagnant. And the number of boaters, again, these canoes, kayaks, and paddlecraft, they don't buy a license. So that's a free sport. We still have to put the boat ramps in. So really, again, not much growth there. We did see a little growth when COVID hit. Everybody figured out, I can't talk to somebody in person, but I can go outdoors. We had a lot of people go outdoors in COVID, which is good, but that's kind of going back to where it was. So that's a real great challenge for us. Let me see. I do have for you today here on the back counter, and you'll probably be the last group to ever get these because funding, we mentioned funding is a good part. We can't probably produce these anymore. First of all, I want you to realize, I know it says 2023, I know we're in 25. It takes us to produce this report with all the data in here, like number of calls for service and all the investigations. It takes about 6 months for us to put this together. And we can't start it until the end of like 2024, we start it in January. And it's going to go to print probably in a couple of weeks for 2024. Time it comes out, it's almost 6 months old or even longer. But we used to produce more. We're to the point where we can't. Now we're producing money for legislators, people that can give us money, basically. They have the authority. So this is probably the last time. Feel free to take one. It's got a lot of information in here. Obviously, I cannot cover all this information. There's a few things I do want to cover that I thought I want to just highlight for you. Because a lot of people are confused on the difference between us and other law enforcement officers. Then you throw out that we do have full police powers. So we wrote something. It's very much near the front of the book here. We wrote something called the CPO badge, and we tried to explain the differences, and maybe this will help by me reading this to tell you the differences. The badge of the Virginia Conservation Police Officer represents those who have dedicated their lives to protection of Virginia's wildlife and natural resources, as well as promoting a safe environment for anglers, hunters, boaters, and other outdoor enthusiasts. To earn it requires comprehensive training and highly specialized skills, along with a passion for the outdoors and its wildlife. The basic, if you go to a police academy in the state of Virginia, I think it's 17 weeks. Ours is about 30 weeks. So we have to have so many extra weeks to learn all this other stuff in addition to being a police officer. Conservation police officers are fully certified officers, as I mentioned earlier, with the authority to enforce all laws. However, due to the unique nature of this law enforcement profession, those who wear it are unlike any other police officer. Conservation police officers perform their public service duties while taking on many different roles. They range from educator to ambassador to outdoor enthusiast, from evidence technician. We don't hire somebody to collect our evidence, we have to collect it. To boat collision reconstructionist, we have to do boat reconstruction. And I tell you, it's much harder to do that than it is to do highway. There's no skid marks on the water. So all your construction's on that boat damage and how it got hit. Very difficult. And from crime scene analyst to wildlife crime detective responsible for managing informants. We manage a lot of informants because we have a lot of people out there that want to protect the wildlife, and they're basically informants. They're giving us information. We could not be successful without people telling us what's going on. When I say everybody's a protector, that's what I kind of mean. If you see somebody doing something to wildlife they shouldn't be doing and you know it's wrong, either, get them to stop, which works, or if they won't stop, at some point you got to put an end to it because they're taking something that belongs to the public. CPOs also provide public safety and emergency response, sometimes during severe weather conditions, requiring them to put their lives in the line to rescue others. Kind of mentioned some examples there. Their workplace is geographically vast and diverse, with modes of transportation that range from four-wheel drive vehicles to various types of boats. When comparing the duties of a CPO to those of a general police officer, one must keep in mind that the difference begins with these positions become the most evident when the pavement ends and the fields and forest begins. Conservation police officers frequently conduct foot patrols in remote areas without backup and under the cover of darkness. In these types of stressful situations, CPOs have the ability to use little more than their communication skills to shield them from wrongdoers as they are the protectors of wildlife and natural resources. A couple other things about your annual report that I looked through quickly just to see what really might interest people. There is an article on in the middle, pretty much middle section. It talks about us, and you'll see, it's weird, you're in Virginia, and you'll see West Virginia and their governor with a bunch of dogs. It talks about us training them. They didn't have a canine unit for 120 years. We trained them a couple of years ago, and now they have a very good canine unit. So that's just an example. And then another story that I thought would be interesting just to hit on is, when I came on, when you talk about covert operations, we have covert officers, and there's really a need because there's a lot of exploitation of wildlife because it's valuable, it has a value in a lot of cases. When I came on 30 years ago, the hot issue was bears, and the parts on bears was the gallbladder, and obviously the claw and the teeth. And they would go over, and the amount of money, they were going for much more than cocaine was going for. Because they grind that stuff up, and over in some Asian countries, that is medicinal. It'll do all kind of things for you that really don't do, but people believe it. Ironically, I thought about this recently. That's not hitting as hard as it used to be, because the population has gotten older, and I think people have gotten smarter. And they're going like, this ain't going to do what it says it's going to do. And there's other things that actually do what they say it's going to do. So I think people have gotten smarter. So now they want something else. Does anybody have an idea what is the big demand in Asian countries right now? What?
Ginseng?
Ginseng is something, but let's wildlife. Let's go wildlife.
Shark fins?
Could be, but it's alive. They want it alive. And we have plenty of it. Well, the population is getting decimated in some areas. Turtles. So what's happening, and there's a story in here. You'll see a container with turtles in it. You know, you think about, you're going down the road, you see somebody picking a turtle up. Well, they probably just moving it off the road, or they just want to take it to show their kids. And it could be the chase, don't get me wrong. I'm sure people have moved turtles, and that's okay to move a turtle off the road. So unfortunately, over in some countries, it's a younger generation. They don't believe the old wives' tales, but they don't have turtles. You know, they've decimated their wildlife population. You know, they didn't do what we did 100 years ago. They didn't hire people to protect it and start restocking. They just let it go. So now our turtles are popular. I mean, they're very worthy, and they want them. And what they actually do, they pay as much for a turtle, because first of all, how many turtles do you have to send over a country? And you got to hide them. You can't do it like let everybody see you got it. How many turtles does it take to get one live turtle over to China or wherever? A lot of turtles got to die. But if you finally get one over there, the money they'll pay as much as a sports car for it. If it's got a really nice shell, they put it in a nice aquarium in their house, and instead of going out to the garage to show them the nice sports car, they say, look what I got. I got a real turtle. And everybody else, well, I've only seen them on TV. That's what happens if you don't protect your wildlife. So, and that's a big market right now, and it's across the United States. We did an investigation where we caught people doing it, and they actually hire people that don't have a clue. They'll pay people, you go pick up, when you ride down the road, you pick up turtles and bring them to me, and I'll give you whatever. Probably not much money, but let's say 10, 20, 30 bucks. That person probably has no clue what's going on. And there's a whole, it's like the mob, there's a whole system of moving that turtle up the scale. But the first person is that person who's got time to ride around and pick up turtles. And they get like pennies, a penny on the dollar, if they're lucky. So I don't even think you get a penny, actually. How they pay gas, they probably don't get much anything with gas prices. But that's a big thing. And we actually did an investigation, and you'll see part of it in your story in the annual report, where the feds were so excited at what we were able to do, they paid to send our agents all the way to California to testify. So they paid the airfare, the hotel, and everything, because we don't have a lot of money to send people to California, so they paid the whole tab. So big deal. So those are the things that are going on now with your wildlife. There's always going to be somewhat of a market out there for wildlife. It's always going to be. It may change what it is, but it'll always be a market. I do want to shout out to our, I did want to mention, I'll mention it here. You'll see I'll throw funding in some place. I just have to, because I've seen how crazy it is that they don't fund us very well. We're very cost effective when we put an officer in the woods. We did an analysis of all state law enforcement. So you have a lot of different state law enforcement. You know, you have state police, everybody knows that. You have ABC, you have VMRC, you have the park officers. So you have a lot of different officers in the state. Capitol Police, that work to protect the Capitol. We did an analysis of how they're funded and how much it costs to put an officer actually in the field or in the woods. And we're about $100,000 less we can put an officer in we're very efficient at what we do. And that's a significant difference of what we can do. The average for the state of Virginia to put an officer, and that costs their salary, their benefits, the infrastructure, the whole deal, the car, whatever equipment they're using, the average is about $250,000. And we do it for about $130,000. And most of that is salary and benefits.
Is that why you've gone down in numbers?
The reason we've gone down is they don't continue to fund us. So vehicles prices go up. So if we buy a truck now, it's not going to cost what it cost 10 years ago. Everybody knows this. We actually have to lease vehicles now. We used to buy our vehicles, now we lease them. We do everything we can do to save money. And we just not been funded enough. Our budget was stagnant for $20 million for like 5 years. So you just can't do that. And then, of course, when we get a state raise, like the governor gives state raises, obviously, the General Assembly, the agency has to absorb it. So there's no like any other state employee, when you get a state raise, they give you more appropriations, they give you more money. So we just have to cut officers. So since I've been colonel 4.5 years, we've lost 14 officers positions we can no longer fund. In 30 years, we've lost 50 altogether. So, and that's the trend. Some states are very fortunate. Missouri is like one of the best state to be a natural resource. They actually get 1% of all sales tax. They get 1/8 of 1% of sales tax. That's a lot of money when you think about it. So, but most states are funded like we are, and it's an issue. Some states like Pennsylvania are a little bit better shape because they get money from fracking, from oil. They get a share of that, and we don't have that going on in Virginia. So, don't want to be the bummer here, but that's just the world we live in. A real shout out I do want to give to the dispatch center. We have a one communication center that covers the whole state, and the state is diverse, as we mentioned earlier. And they are somehow how to manage all of my officers with one center. For example, state police has 7 dispatch centers. Now they got more people, but we still can manage it with one center. That's pretty amazing. I always want to give them a shout out. Officers, even though we only have about 130 what we call field officers, they average over 10,000 enforcement actions per year. So that's warning, summons. Basically what it means is they caught a violation and they either warned, said don't do it again, they wrote a summons, or they arrested a person. Arresting is something serious, like you're a felon with a gun, you're driving, you can't really just say, have a nice day and keep going. So we do about 10,000 enforcement actions. What's really amazing when I ran the numbers for a 3-year period, those 10,000 enforcement actions per year, 455 different laws and regulations. Could you imagine knowing that many different laws and regulations? General police officer, you probably have a handful of tickets you write. If you're working the traffic, it's pretty simple. And I've done that work, so I'm not speaking that I don't know. So we gave 455 different laws and regulations and 488 various warnings. And like I said earlier, 33% of those was public safety. So let's start to wrap up a little bit. Our ultimate goal is voluntary compliance. Yeah, hopefully that's here what it is, right? Because there's no way we can't cover that distance. There's no way. If somebody really wants to I'll use the word rape the resource, they can do it. So we do need citizen cooperation, and we just have to cover a lot of ground. But voluntary compliance is really what we want anyway. To be honest with you, only about 5% of the population will go out there and do really bad things. So, especially to the wildlife. So most people are good. People make honest mistakes. When you have that many rules, you're going to make mistakes. It's the difference making a mistake and doing something intentional. So the key on voluntary compliance is you have to have the fear of detection. If there is no fear of detection, it's been studied 1,000,000 times, you're not going to have, a lot of people that, especially the ones that don't do the bad, they're going to be, there's nobody going to stop me. Why do I buy a license? Why do anything? So it's very important that we have fear of detection. So we have to be successful. The few number of officers we have to find people violating the law. And we do, as I mentioned earlier. But it's a key component and the only way it works that we can be at the numbers we're at and actually make progress in protecting the wildlife. I will, I know I didn't bring any audio visual for you. I know I brought a magazine or a thing to look at, but like I said, I don't do these very often. I don't have a PowerPoint for this. So, but I do want to highly recommend that you look at some of our most recent podcasts. So they're called True Wildlife Crime. If you punch in the Department of Wildlife Resources, you will probably have no problem. Or even nowadays, you even punch in the True Wildlife Crime. We started these podcasts about a year ago. We've now done 4 different ones. Actually, the 5th one just came out. We've got over 500,000 views. For a public organization to have that kind of views is unheard of. I mean, most of the wildlife agencies across the United States are surprised we're getting kind of views. We never get that kind of views. So over 500,000 views, and there are topics such as exposing a prolific turkey poacher. You can actually hear the story. The officer sits with a person and they talk about the story. They show things about what they caught with the person. That person had a silencer they were using on their gun, their rifle. So, I mean, dangerous stuff going on sometimes. That's the first one we did. Then we did another one on our elite canine team. I'll actually say that one did the worst because if I brought a dog here, I don't even need to speak. The truth be known. And I'm still trying to find out how I can get a dog to fly a drone because that's the 2 most popular things we ever go anywhere. And I think then I can retire. But the dog does not do good on video. It's not the same thing. It's not the same experience. You want a dog to be there. So, but that one didn't do as well, but it does tell you how we train the dog. The guy who's there, he's kind of the dog whisperer for us. He's really the best of the best. There's another one on the Hollywood buck case. You might have heard of that. That was some deer in Richmond, beautiful deer that were pictured in a cemetery, and they were unfortunately harvested at night and illegally, and the guy was stupid enough to brag about it, and we caught him. So that case is one. A poaching spree that shocked Southwest Virginia. That was just an extensive amount of things that were killed, unbelievable. And then the newest one was on stripers at Kerr Reservoir in Mecklenburg County. That one just came out recently. They're very good. They range from 20 to 40 minutes. So the one thing you will see from that, and it is what it is. A lot of people get upset because of punishment. Well, that person should have been locked up for life. That person should have been, the comments, if you look at them, you're going to see that be the number one comment. But we have no authority there. We make the arrest, we take it to court, we try to get a conviction. The judges, the system, the way the system is, it's just not, it is what it is. But we still have to do what we got to do. So it still gives people the fear of detection. So, and that stops a lot of people from doing what they might do. We are an extremely young police force currently. We've gone through some times where we lost a lot of officers with experience for different reasons. We're highly desirable by other law enforcement agencies, my people. They've got more training, they've got more variety of what they can do. So sheriff's offices like to pick people, and plus you put one of my officers in the sheriff's office or in the county, they work with the sheriff's office to backing their people up. So very quickly the sheriff goes, well, I need this guy. And that's what happens. It happens a lot. And they'll offer them whatever, and they have a little bit more leadway. The relevancy plan that we're working on, I'll mention that briefly because I think that the future is important. The future is changing. So it's important to know what's going to happen in the future. And as I mentioned earlier, the game protection is still important, but it's not quite the what's happening in the future. We got less people going outside. We want more people going outside. You want your job, you want what you do to be, not only respected, but you want people to see the value in what you're doing. And really, why would we not want people to see the great diversity of wildlife that we have? So we've done a lot of, we made a relevancy plan. I think it's louder than I thought it was going to be. But I think I'm good. 1 o'clock normally? Okay. If you got to leave, leave. If you got to go to the bathroom, go. And if I'm boring you to death, you can leave too. So as we try to connect more people with the outdoors, that really is a vision. And I mentioned earlier, we talked about our people being ambassadors. That's what they are. They're ambassadors to bring people out. It is a very difficult thing to do. People that lived in the city all their life, they're scared when it's dark. They're scared. When they see trees and there's no pavement to look at. So it is what it is. But what we need to do that and to provide those public safety services, we've got to do that to grow statewide. It's getting to a point where we've got to have people value the wildlife. And a lot of studies have been done national on this subject, and they're all saying that the agencies need to raise their capacity to remove the barriers, or their people are worried about going outdoors. And what you need to do those is you need expertise. You need to tell people, you need an expert telling people, don't be afraid. There's ways, wildlife's not as bad as you hear about. We don't have grizzlies in Virginia. Well, we might have them, but somebody has them in a cage. So, it's different. So we really want people to understand that. We have to have the appropriate staffing, and we have to have the appropriate resources to send this message. And that's what's being pretty much put across the whole United States, and we're doing what we can do for that. For the expertise part, what we're doing is we're leading the way, and you heard mentioned earlier about accreditation. Accreditation is very important. You would not want to go to a hospital if you found out they weren't accredited. You don't want a degree from some university that you can't have their standards and have no. So when I first took over as colonel, we were not accredited as a police agency. The first thing we did, we got accredited for Virginia through the Virginia accreditation system for all law enforcement. It doesn't matter if we should still be able to accredit ourselves with state police or any other law enforcement. So we did that, and then we figured out, well, this job's a little different. What's the standard when you put a decoy out and you want somebody to shoot it? What's the standard on boats? Well, most police agencies don't have boats. So what we're leading right now, we're leading a national effort. We got 18 states that have already signed on to create a national conservation police or game warden accreditation program where you basically get audited. Are you doing these things you say you do? So these things are important, and that gives you expertise. Plus, you really, the thing good about accreditation is you can, and if we remember it from school, plagiarism's fine. I don't have to rewrite this stuff. If somebody else has figured out how to do it, I'm going to probably steal it and just make a few tweaks. And that's perfectly fine in accreditation. And we're learning a lot from, we're all dealing with a lot of same issues across the United States. Some agencies have figured out how to deal with certain issues better than others. Why would you not want to learn that from another agency instead of having to just figure it out on your own? So that's that piece of our relevancy plan. And then the other piece is staffing. We can't continue on this path we're on. If another 30 years from now we're at 50 less officers, now we're 100 officers, and now there's many counties that are vacant. When counties are vacant, so if I've got we put them in districts, like groupings of counties, like probably normally most is 5, and I may only have one person working in 5 counties one day. And that little message I gave you about how many miles they cover, that day they're covering way more, and that probably covering 1,000 square miles. So, because you can't make everybody work every day. So we have many a days where I'll have 5 counties have maybe 1 or 2 people working in all 5 counties. And they don't work shift work, so they may all be off at 9 o'clock, and then we get a boat accident in the middle of the night. So then you have your overtime issue. So we do have to keep on the staffing. We will continue on the staffing and try to do better with the General Assembly. So that's a current piece on that. And then the final piece is our resources. How do we do better with what we do have, and how do we train our people? And that's our Natural Resource Training Academy. We've had our own police academy. When I came on, I went to a regional academy 30 years ago. 20 years ago, we started our own academy just for law enforcement. We do the basic stuff that you get for police, and we do everything now. Used to be I went to the regional academy, and then I went to the game warden academy. Now it's all combined. We've been doing it for 20 years. We do a really good job at it. So that's the other piece of our plan, and I have some additional information for you on that subject. This is hot off the press. Actually, it was printed last night, but it's pretty hot. And actually, we're getting these made into more like a postcard. I don't know if the younger generation knows what a postcard is, but they're smaller, they cost less money. So we're really trying to expand our effort. We really want to be, since we do a really good job with K-9, for example, why would we not want to be the K-9 school for all of the East Coast? Why not? I mean, we trained in West Virginia. Maryland, I'll give you a funny story. Maryland Natural Resources. And anybody from Maryland, it doesn't matter. Anybody from Maryland? Do you work for the natural resources in Maryland? All right, I feel good now. So right now we don't have the capacity to do it. You can't keep doing it because we don't have the capacity. We don't have a real place, a facility to do it, and the stuff to do it. So what happens is Maryland needs it. They want to do it. They know it's a good idea. So they say, well, we'll go train with state police dogs. So they train with them. Now they buy the right dog. They buy a lab. Because we want labs. We don't want German Shepherds. We don't want bite dogs. We don't bomb dogs. We don't want that. We want a lab that smells really good. That, you can smell that when somebody walks through they can actually smell over water. Believe it or not, it's pretty amazing what our dogs can do. So yeah, it's just amazing. I'll give you an example. The Bridgewater shooting. Everybody remember that? It wasn't that long ago. A couple years ago, the Bridgewater shooting with the security officer and the police officer got killed on the campus of Bridgewater. So we get called to that, and state police gets called, and all these other people get called. Well, they catch the guy, obviously, but he threw the gun they didn't know where he threw the gun, and he ended up throwing it in some water. And every other dog was there. They all tried, they couldn't do it. And first of all, they didn't even most officers don't like to walk in the water because their shoes will get dirty. So our guy comes and says, no, I don't care, and take the dog across, and they found the firearm in water. So that's just an example. So what we're trying to do is really build upon, and it's got a mission and vision. It's kind of what we're trying to do and what we're really trying to make ourselves more relevant. I'll read the mission real quick. The mission of this, and it's called W3, and it stands for Woods, Wildlife, and Water Natural Resource Training Academy. We're really trying to expand what we were doing, and we want to share our wildlife experiences. Our vision is sharing our wildlife experiences in an immersive, hands-on outdoor training environment. The mission itself, that's the vision. The mission is to greatly expand from training future generations on how to protect our wildlife resources to the much more challenging task on how to bring others to experience what the outdoors has to offer them in a safe manner. And that's what I've been talking about this whole time, how things are changing. It has goals, obviously. We want to continue our academy. We want to expand to do other police agencies such as Virginia Marine Resource, other first and local responders. We can train them. We've been doing that. Offer additional opportunities for K-9 and tracking schools across the East Coast. And we also want to have a Champions of the Wild program. We can have graduates that will come through it. It's kind of like a civilian police academy. But all this takes money, it all takes effort. We're trying to do public-private partnerships. We're doing things we've never done before. And if the cards are over there, if you're interested in this, a card looks like this. If you flip it over, it says, and I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but if you have to cut the mic, but join, I'm asking for money. Let's be clear. And I don't do this. I mean, I've been law enforcement 42 years. I don't like to do this. I mean, I remember going to Walmart and saying, can I get some fishing rods so I can have a kids event and let the kids have the rod? I didn't even like doing that. So, but it is what it is. You got to do what you got to do. So join the W3 mission today. Help us develop a passion in others for Virginia outdoor experiences. Anybody, I'm sure people know who Ward Burton is. Ward Burton. My dad knew who he was. Stock car. He's got a wildlife foundation. He's a very nice gentleman. He is offered to, the problem with a state agency taking money, obviously, first of all, you can't get your tax write-off and all that mess, but really it's good to find a foundation to help us, just like this is a foundation, as you all have here. It's a foundation, they have a wildlife foundation. They're gonna take money for this project called W3, and they've been taking money. We did a soft launch. You're the first audience ever to hear this. And there's ways to donate through them. There's a QR code. I think most people might know what a QR code is, but there's also a mailing address. And you can do it by mail. You just make sure you put W3 if you end up doing it, because they do other fundraising for other things that he does, and he does some really great things. And I know people like swag, so we decided, we do have swag. $25 you get a really nice challenge coin, and a picture of it's on here. And there's other things, other type of coins you can get for different levels. Really, even at the $25 level, $25 matters, because what it matters is the General Assembly we don't have enough voice. And even with this, let's say this goes on, let's say we raise some money, but we need more money. Go to the General Assembly. We have this many supporters who've given at least $25. It does matter. So it's just something to think about. No real pressure here. But you're going to that foundation. You don't have to give me a check or anything. So, but just, I do want to throw that out as an opportunity. If you have any questions about it, let me know. I would like to end with, we do have an obligation to show the outdoors to people who are non-traditional constituents. And so they can witness firsthand our greatest successes in managing our public trust that we have in wildlife and natural resources. But this is only possible, and what the studies have also said, they have to feel like it's a safe environment, and that's really what takes the time. So we have to provide that safe, enjoyable outdoor environment. Thank you for listening and for helping us be protectors of wildlife and natural resources.